Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of My EdTech Live. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you as always for your support. As you know, we appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for your comments. We take this to heart because we completely want to improve and bring you some amazing conversations, as we always do, into our space so we can continue to grow. And today is no different. And I am excited to welcome our very first four-time guest and our third, well, I can say fourth actually, third-time guest. We have Thomas Thompson and Thomas Hummel from EduAid joining us today. Thomas Thompson, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having us today, Fonz, for the fourth time. I feel like the privileged list of guests. The Tonight Show, they would have like the 10 comedians that would get to do repeat appearances. So it's an honor.
Yes, no, fourth-time guest for Thomas Thompson and Thomas Hummel. You are a three-time guest now, so that's a wonderful honor. How are you doing today?
Fonz, I'm doing great, and it's always a pleasure to get to speak with you. So thank you so much for having us.
No, thank you. And I'm really excited to have you all here. And as all my listeners know, and I always, when I close out the show and thank all my sponsors, you are a sponsor of My EdTech Life. And I want to thank you for believing in our mission and what we're doing to just continue to bring some great conversations into this space and just see where we stand, where we're going, how we're growing, and just kind of take it from there. Right now, I think that having dialogue is great, and just having those conversations continue to, as the technology continues to grow, it's something that's very important. So I'm really excited to get into today's conversation. However, we may have some first-time listeners or some first people that are learning about EduAid for the very first time. As you know, we were just at ISTE and, a lot of conferences, and the summertime, usually a lot of teachers get to dive into a lot of tools. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, I'll go ahead and start off with Thomas Thompson. Can you give us a little brief introduction and what your context is, not only in the EduAid space, but in the educator space as well?
Yeah, of course. My name is Thomas Thompson, co-founder and CEO at EduAid. Prior to and concurrent with starting EduAid, I was a middle school social studies teacher. That's how I met Thomas Hummel, one of the other co-founders of EduAid. Taught in rural Maryland on the Eastern Shore. Did that for 3 years. Then I was starting graduate school. Said, okay, I can't be driving an hour to work every day. I started teaching in Glen Burnie, Maryland, just north of where I live in Annapolis. Did that for another 2 years. We launched EduAid at that time. That sort of gone out of hand, so I had to step away from teaching and focus on EduAid full time. And happy to do it. We bootstrapped this thing with 3 people, one of those being Thomas Hummel.
Excellent. Thomas, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit of your context within the education space and in the EduAid space as well.
Yeah, so I'm just really blessed to still be teaching. I think that anybody who goes into teaching, they do it because they love it, not to get rich or anything like that. And so, I feel very fortunate to have a great teammate like Thomas here, who kind of can take over a little bit more on the EduAid side, as far as all things going with the business. But, just on the teaching side, I think it's great that we have the ability to implement our tool into the daily practice that no other company really can do, because we're just teachers and we're just trying to help teachers. So it's awesome to be part of this journey and also remain committed to my community and to my students. So I feel very blessed, Fonz.
Excellent. No, and that's wonderful. And I think that's something that is great about both of you and the work that you're doing from the very beginning, really still kind of your foot in the classroom, foot in EduAid, and still being able to see how it is that you can continue to improve your platform, on the daily, on the monthly, on the yearly, and just to continue to help educators. And I know that there are many educators out there that are extremely thankful for the work that you're doing and the work that you've done from the very beginning, as I know, and personally in having you all on the show various times and various phases of EduAid, it has been something wonderful to see your growth and really how you continue to enhance not only the platform. As we know, many people can come up and, have critiques about platforms, but the fact that you listen to those, even the critiques, but also listen to teachers to help improve the platform and really stick to that pedagogy-based learning that is really reliable and can help teachers not necessarily feel that they're doing something completely different or learning something new, but really enhancing what they are already doing is something that has been great. And that's something that I love to catch up on. From the last time that you guys were here back in episode 282, I know that a lot has changed from 282 to this being 328. And although the number seems very close, there are definitely months and many months going through there and a lot of growth in EduAid. So Thomas Thompson, I'll go ahead and start with you. As we kind of dive into the growth of EduAid from the very last time that you were here, as you guys were planning on going and doing some efficacy studies and really diving in deep and hearing from educators to see how you can improve. Can you please share with us a little bit of your findings and how that has helped you continue to improve the platform, but also improve the learning in the classroom as well?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it has been quite a few months. We've launched a few really intensive partnerships with some other organizations that have allowed us to take a really close look at our platform. So we worked with a cohort of teachers at Teach for America in a kind of a controlled study over a set number of weeks, and we had these kind of meetup calls, and they played around on some platforms, implemented them in their class to set a few objectives that they shared with the cohort, and it was just great getting a lot of the feedback from those folks. Really bright group of teachers, super committed. Had a lot of great notes on not only things that we could add, some different ways of thinking about how we approach certain subjects, but then also the positive feedback too, hearing from teachers who are new teachers, veteran teachers as well, coming across new and diverse methods of instruction they didn't previously consider, or having supplemental resources they wouldn't have previously had access to. I mean, that's quite rewarding. The other piece of this, however, is it's you want to go beyond making teachers feel as though they're doing something effective or feeling efficient, right? This is just the first step, kind of the tip of the iceberg. Really, we are looking at the largest bottlenecks being validation, verification of the AI outputs themselves that you're putting into the instructional context, and prompting. I mean, prompting and verification are really the two large bottlenecks. We've gone a long way to do kind of more of that alignment work on our side. So we have a partnership currently where we are looking with CZI, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, using their evaluator tools. This allows us to really get in on a very fine level and look at text complexity and sentence structure and ensure that when you're selecting different grade levels on EduAid, that's coming through in the outputs from the AI and that we're able to better constrain the AI for those grade level texts. And then just continue to expand out our knowledge graph of learning sciences research that we use to make rubrics and kind of grade the responses ourselves while we're testing and developing them. That's been a pretty rewarding experience. I'm pretty happy with where that knowledge graph is and how these prompts are looking and how things are coming out now. So, I mean, a lot of work there, but, those just streamed wall of text got old pretty fast for most people. So it's we went the way of really highly structured outputs. So graphic organizers, Venn diagrams, Frege model stuff, marking the text exercises, really structured games. So these things are themed, templated, formatted. You have total control over all of it. You could change the colors, change which pieces are there, add a collaboration activity with one click, take it away, add in a summarization or retrieval questions or whatever. It's all very modular, really easy to use, and really in a classroom-ready package.
Excellent. I love it. And like you mentioned, classroom ready package is something that's great. And one of the things that I love, and I'm going to bring it up too, because of course, having you guys on the show is I know that you guys really emphasize that pedagogy first, not just the tech as being the core to EduAid, because normally it's hey, there are several platforms out there and it's really all about the tech and how I can do this and make this easier for you, which is, in many ways something that is great. As part of my research that I'm doing through my dissertation, I know that that's a major component as far as the ease of use and doing some certain selective tasks a lot quicker. But I love the fact that you focus more on that pedagogy and that practice. So, Thomas Hummel, I want to ask you, just in continuing kind of with this idea of what I asked Thomas T about, you still being in the classroom and being able to use this and work with this in the classroom and get feedback. And, what has that been like? And what are some of the things that you have been excited about since the last time that you were on the show.
Yeah, it's funny, Fawns. Like, every teacher has their own identity, and my identity sort of is like the first teacher in the building kind of guy. So
Yeah.
I'm up early, and I do a lot of my planning for the school day in the morning, just because year 10 coming up, it's just like I don't need to go home and spend tens of hours a week doing this kind of stuff. Like, I have everything sort of how I want it, but it needs to be adjusted. And that's where we're finding, like, where we've really made some serious enhancements with EduAid is like when I go in the morning and I start to adjust my lessons to make them higher quality, and things are not working the way that I need them to work as the teacher in the moment, I blow these guys up on the phone, and I'm like, I'm calling that, and the one guy, our buddy Ty, he lives out in Denver. Like, I'm waking him up, 3 days a week sometimes, because we only want to put out the best possible product that we can for teachers. And if I'm a teacher and I'm running into snags on our product, what are we doing? We're not actually making it easier for people. And so we've really tried to refine out any difficult problems in our product with working with it. But like Thompson was saying, the quality of our outputs, we spend a lot of time, running the same thing on multiple sites and checking it, and just making sure that what we're providing is of the highest quality that we can get for teachers, and not just framed in a way that's like, a lesson plan, but framed in a way that it's reaching the certain taxonomy level, it's reaching the certain amount of questions that need to be done, and just finding little ways to improve our product to help teachers. I think if I create something and it only gave me 2 questions or 3 questions, and I needed 5 most of the time, just little things like that make a huge difference for teachers, because we need to save them time when time is of the essence, and time is valuable for those teachers. So,
Excellent. No, and that, like you said, you've kind of hit the nail on the head. I know that for sure on one of your LinkedIn posts. And if you haven't followed Thomas H. or even Thomas Thompson too on LinkedIn, please do, because they do provide and share just a lot of wonderful content, and they're completely transparent about their app. And even just like Thomas H., I know you've put up a lot of posts too, you still being in the classroom, and like you said, being there early, leaving there late, and talking a little bit about the way teachers feel at the end of the year and everything that you go through. So that's one of the things that I feel is a little unique, actually a lot unique, in the fact that you are still in the classroom while still being a co-founder, and you're able to straddle both worlds, but you bring that insight and that teacher feel, that teacher feedback, also while being a co-founder and being very I guess proactive to the changes and the things that are needed to help make this a lot easier for teachers to use, not just the tool, but giving them great pedagogy. So, Thomas T., I want to come back to...
Can I touch on that real quick? Like,
yeah, of course.
It's not just me at this point, right? Like, we are so lucky with our product to be where we're at, that we spend 1 day a week literally going over feedback from our teachers. And we get so much feedback about the quality of what we're doing and what we're putting out there, that we spend that Thursday meeting, we'll sit there and we'll just go through all this feedback, and then we'll go implement these things. And then if it's, we try to make sure that we're doing the best from the people that we're trying to serve. So it's not just me that's using this, but, it's over 800,000 teachers at this point that have used this thing. And it's like, we really respect their professionalism, and we really value their feedback. So it's not just a me thing. It's like this whole thing is a community. It's like
the community makes doing the app much easier. There's the constant source of inspiration, ideas, and instead of turning away from them, especially at the critical moments, it's important to lean in and understand that they're coming from you, even if the messaging is frustrated. It's coming from a place of professional frustration, right? They have a job that they want to do well, and these tools were promised or given to them as a way to do that. And if they don't, then we're doing a disservice to a very important enterprise, which is public education. So,
yeah. Well, Thomas T., kind of going back into this is a nice segue as far as getting that feedback. And just like you mentioned, Thomas H., I mean, you've got, thousands upon thousands of users, not only here in the U.S., though, but I want to talk a little bit about this internationally, because that was a nice segue, because I was just thinking, too, there are several people that I have seen and followed that are using EduAid, in Africa. They're using it in other countries. So I want to ask you, and we'll start off with you, Thomas T., as far as, like you mentioned, the feedback and the evidence that you receive from international users, how have you taken that? How has that influenced your product? And also, especially, with localized curricula, how has that been for you to adjust to that?
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fops from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg smash it. I mean app smash it with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah, I mean, the adjustment period wasn't too difficult, right? We keep it pretty open in terms of what our tool was able to do. So when we focus on the particular pedagogical aspects of the tool, so whether it's retrieval practice, distributed practice, self-explanation, elaborative interrogation, whatever the specific method might be, right? Those methods are generalizable regardless of locality, regardless of country of origin. The main difference there comes in the particular content of what the instructor is teaching, not the method that they would use to teach it necessarily. The method should vary, though, depending on the context. I'll be clear about that. We leave it really open for the user to input that contextual information, where they can upload a document with their curricular materials to use as the basis for a generation. If there's maybe a particular standards database that they have to work from, we're able to ingest those as well. And of course, Eduaid is offered in multiple different languages. Now, we have specific standards tools for US-based standards. I mean, kind of our bias, given that we're developing in the US, so Common Core Math, Common Core English, Next Generation Science. Things that we're looking at, bringing in the IB curriculum is definitely an area of interest and importance as we're working with more international schools. But generally, I mean, the biggest gap is, of course, the ability to access the tool, right? That in itself is the biggest barrier, not so much barriers within the tool. There are linguistic barriers. There are barriers in like sampling, for example, like the kind of things the AI will provide as examples tend to be kind of US based. That's not just an Eduaid thing. That's a general AI phenomenon currently. Like, the same thing would happen if you were to use a school AI or Diffit or Magic School or any of these other players in foreign countries. If you're building on top of the foundation models developed in the US using mostly English corpora, you'll run into the same issue. I mean, some independent testing, I think, Hummel, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Ken Sheldon who does this, where he'll test a particular historical topic that, depending on the context, can be either like framed in a US basis or framed in a few other like different contextual bases as well. And usually the AI will default to the US examples in his prompting. So, I mean, it's definitely a gap, something that you have to continue to work on. But for us, again, focusing on the pedagogical moves, the methods, being at that level, that certainly, I think, helps us kind of translate Eduaid into other countries and around the world. But to the access piece, I mean, we have the Eduaid kind of scholarship program where we just kind of give access to Eduaid away for free to folks who otherwise would not be able to get their hands on it, or it's prohibitively expensive, whatever it might be. I mean, because we're coming from a perspective where we view education as a public good, as a foundational human right, and the methods and materials to support instruction, I mean, they should just be as open as and accessible as the instruction itself. Like, if you're locking those behind very strict paywalls, yeah, you got to keep the lights on. Like, that's one thing. But if you make it totally inaccessible, I mean, I think it's a crisis that we see in research and science right now. A lot of the great papers are locked behind paywalls. Independent researchers are basically locked out. I mean, who's got $35 to drop on one research article, or thousands of dollars for a collection? So, I mean, those gaps are always top of mind as we're building and trying to expand access to the tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just kind of before I go back to Thomas H., talking about, paywalls. I mean, even just myself having to do research and finding articles, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, here's the link. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you got to pay this and you got to pay that. I was like, excellent academia. You know, I'm trying to get
Yeah.
information to continue to grow and continue to research, and there it is. And but I get it, you know, that's kind of the way it goes. But that's something that I do appreciate about you all, that you do a lot of great good, you know, within the international schools and even here locally. I know that for a fact, and I've heard many of my friends too as well say that they're very thankful for the work that you're doing in that. And so, Thomas H., kind of going back on that too as well, in your experience, you know, in the classroom too as well, like, you know, being able to get that feedback from just international educators, you know, what does that feel like, you know, building something that is now not only in the hands of U.S. teachers, but also internationally? You know, what are some of your big takeaways, and how has that helped you continue to grow within EduAid and EduAid altogether?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started this, Fawns, I think that anybody will be surprised at where where this has gone. I mean, the workspace flow that we've made, right? You see that almost everywhere now, which is crazy, in all kinds of different products. And so we just feel really blessed to be able to bring this to teachers and all over the world. And specifically, something that I'm super proud of is that um, there's a lot of teachers in the Kenya area of Africa that don't get, especially like the rural part, they don't have a whole lot of access. And we've been able to tap in through LinkedIn or different places, different venues of social media and stuff. But we've really connected with them. And we've guaranteed life subscriptions to the Million Teacher Movement in Africa, which spans across multiple countries. We've guaranteed life access to EduAid for that. And so, you know, while we've only given away a few thousand accounts already, which is still a lot, right? Like if you added up the numbers financially, it would be a ton of money for us. But we are just so lucky to be in a spot where we can do the good that we set out to do, and that it doesn't like prevent us from also maintaining the business that we have. And so things like the Million Teacher Movement, things like our scholarship program, it brings me so much joy to help teachers save time and to create higher quality lessons, because the ripple effect of that, doing that good piece, is like, you don't know where that's going to go, but you know that the ripple is there and that it's going to expand. And so it just really, right, it gets me, like I have like imposter syndrome sometimes, because I walk into my school in my cheap, crappy little Volkswagen car, and yet my product's being used in, you know, Africa, or being used in Vietnam, or being, you know, you could go down the list in 120 different countries that day it's going to be used. And it really makes me feel weird about myself in some regards, but it also gives me a sense of pride. And
Yeah.
even more than that, like I now feel responsible. Like I don't know if I had to, and Thomas, I don't know if you feel that way, but at least I do. I feel responsible for doing the right thing in this space, and that when you have teachers who are people that are just trying to do good, and you kind of have them using that product, that there's a huge responsibility there to not, you know, we don't want to make them feel any way but, you know, better about their job. And that's it. Like we want them to feel energized. We want them to feel good about teaching. And at the end of the day, if people love teaching even more because of our product, we've done so much good in this world that you can't even wrap your head around, pretty much.
And that's excellent. And, you know, that's something that is great, Thomas. And I think that's something that is definitely, you should be proud of, you know, in that. And I know imposter syndrome, a lot of us deal with it, you know, in that sense. But just the fact, like I said, it's just a testament of the hard work and consistency that both of you have been able to do and bring since the very beginning. So I love that. And, you know, that's something that I really do appreciate from you all and the work that you're doing, because there's LinkedIn posts upon LinkedIn posts also of international teachers just stating how thankful they are to be able to have access to a tool, a platform like yours, to be able to do what they do best and enhance that learning and be able to help their students continue to learn in that. So go ahead.
Well, I think that this comes out of the fact that Thomas and I started teaching in a really low income, like hurting area. And we didn't set out to like change the world right off the get go, but we did set out to make a difference in the areas that need it the most. And that's why I think whenever things like that, like the Million Teacher Movement pops up in Africa and we can support that, I think that just resonates so much more with how we started this thing.
The way we learn is changing. Are you ready to transform education? Welcome to Yellow Dig, where learning isn't just another assignment, it's a conversation, a movement, a game changer. With Yellow Dig, students engage naturally, sharing ideas, exploring concepts, and driving conversations that matter. No forced post, no busy work, just real learning. Educators, you'll see the difference. Higher engagement, deeper understanding, and a thriving community of learners who want to participate. From higher ed to workforce training, Yellow Dig fuels curiosity, collaboration, and connection inside and outside of the classroom. The future of learning is here. Are you in? Yellow Dig, connecting minds and igniting possibilities.
Well, I kind of want to change the conversation over a little bit, and we'll come back to a couple of questions that I do want to ask, especially, a recent Substack that Thomas Thompson pushed through. I think it was today, and so on, that really caught my attention. But I want to ask you, I just came back from ISTE, and I mean, really, it's AI is all the rage. There's so many platforms. I think my biggest takeaway, I won't say what the platform was, but their spiel was they kind of caught me in an aisle as I was just kind of walking, and they're like, hey, have you heard of our app? And I was like, no, I haven't. Tell me a little bit more. And they're like, well, you see these apps over here, they help the teachers before the lesson. These apps over here help the teachers after the lesson, but we help them during. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And he goes, oh, well, it's an app that you download, and teacher wears either the phone around their neck or is somehow mic'd to their phone, and it really just kind of keeps those notes, and again, I guess either offers suggestions or some kind of write up afterwards and so on. And to me, I was like, well, what about student voice, and what if there's that PII? Oh, well, the teacher wears the mic. The students, you shouldn't be able to hear the teacher voice, and so on. And so there's a lot of tools that are out there. Now, of course, with that, there's a lot of people that are kind of in the middle and try to be in the middle like myself. There's also, of course, you've got, people that are just really on the AI hype train. There's others that are still kind of wait and see. So there's people at different levels. And as we even saw just the advocacy that has come up and the skepticism of AI in education, as we see Microsoft and do this push, with other platforms, and of course AFT, giving this alarm of, teachers are here. We don't have to worry about getting AI being replaced or teachers being replaced by AI. How is that, for you all, both as founders, as educators, as people that are trying to do good? How do you navigate that tension on the day-to-day? Do you just really lean into the hype, or do you respond, to that pushback, and not necessarily pushing people back, but, and maybe just saying, okay, well, this is kind of that pushback that we get. How might we adjust? So I want to start off with you, Thomas H, first, and then we'll go to Thomas T.
Maybe Thomas, maybe he should go first. I'm the unhinged one.
Okay. All right.
We'll let him go first. If I start, who knows where this is going to end.
Yeah. I'll begin by saying I think hype is the reason why the statement "believe half of what you see and none of what you hear" probably is so salient. Ultimately, I worry in that I know teachers have been burned by educational technology on quite a few occasions historically, right? The promise of personalization has been around since like 2008, and it was going to be MOOCs that are going to lead to true personalized learning and supreme access and lack of a need for structured institutions and things like this. But ultimately, I worry that too much focus on AI will lose sight of how we should be designing these tools, which is an understanding, or at least a theory of mind of how people actually learn, of how people actually teach, of how people actually develop. And that if your tool does not in some meaningful way interact with one of these three domains, it's like, what's the purpose of the tool at that level? It's like the tech being kind of inserted in as a substitution of something you already do. It might not be, it's not good enough at that point. Like the technology should not just be merely substituting something you could already do, but hey, it's a new platform. It should, like, in some meaningful way interface with what you do on a day-to-day basis. So we try to avoid the hype. We kind of have a strict rule internally where we try to avoid like using like the buzzwords in conversation, because it's just kind of easy to like hide what you really think behind some of those terms. So we just try to speak as simply and precisely as possible. I mean, you're also pretty thorough and delicate in how you kind of phrase things, but in general, it's just like get to the base of the problem. And the base of the problem is, okay, you want to assist teachers at the level of planning, so maybe they're slightly more efficient, feel less pressure, burnout, these kinds of things. But more vitally, more crucially, we want to bridge that gap between research and practice and education, with the high translation cost of trying to be a highly effective teacher, trying to translate kind of just rules of thumb, like space your practice, bring in new concepts into practice, but like when to space? When do I bring in new concepts? Generative AI has an incredible amount of promise there, but it's not the everything tool. Thinking you can put students in front of AI tutors and it's going to solve education, I'm not really sure that's where we should be going. One reason is I think a lot of technologists discount the embodied human factors that are important for teaching and learning. I mean, why does a lot of in-person instruction work? Humans have a tendency towards conformity, I think, in general. So when you're working with a group of other students, your peers, and a mentor figure in the classroom, there's this pressure to conform, right? And in our kind of natural hardwiring kind of goes for that, right? But if you unmoor us from that group environment where we're interacting with our peers and interacting with an authority figure, and I'm just sitting in my room on a computer talking to an AI chatbot, where's that pressure? Where's the desire? Where's the motivation? Where's the engagement? I mean, those are all pieces that I think are generally lacking, and why we see lackluster returns from AI tutoring systems presently. It's really difficult to do that, especially when you can say IDK 3 times and the AI tutor just gives you the answer. And it's like, well, okay, so what's the theory of learning there? Are we suggesting that it's just exposure to correct answers? No, not quite. So it's like, what's the purpose of the AI intervention? What is the purpose of the tool? What are the unique affordances? What are its boundaries? And how do you adopt that into your unique context? And if you don't have answers to those questions as a developer, you probably question your motives. That might have been strongly worded, but I figured if I come out strong, maybe Hummel will help bring it down, or he's just going to keep us climbing here. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that might have calmed him a bit, but as always, I'm definitely very interested in Thomas H. What you have to say about this. I mean, you've seen the space. I know you're very active on LinkedIn and all social media, and so you see it all. I mean, and so I want to know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a parent and you see the results that came out of Alpha School, where their kids all scored in the top 2% of the state on the state testing, and if you don't have an education background, why would you not send your kids there? You know what I mean? Why would you not give them the opportunity to be in the top 2% like everybody else that has gone to that school? And so while I think that, that is not real for everybody, and I spend most of my time as a teacher trying to engage and motivate my students rather than, necessarily diving into the curriculum all the time and actually learning new things, right? Like, there's a huge part of my job that is the engagement piece, that is the motivating piece that a chatbot could never do, and that a student who is not motivated will never get anything out of. But there is a select bit of students who are highly motivated, whose parents are sending them to schools like the Alpha School and those other things, and they're performing super well. And I get really worried, Fonz, is that I think last time we talked about this, there wasn't any data out on the Alpha School testing and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, who knows if you put your kids in front of a chatbot and all this stuff. But when they have a really good performance like those kids did this last year, I do think it puts public education on a pretty shaky ground sometimes, when just because we're not getting great results all across the nation from our schools. In fact, we're getting subpar results across the nation from our schools. And so I don't really know what the answer is. I don't have an answer, but I do know that, I have a son. We are looking at new areas to move because the school district at which I teach is not that great. It's a 5 out of 10 on Zillow. And the only thing I'm looking at when I go to a new school is a 10 out of 10 school. When I'm looking at new houses, is for a 10 out of 10 school. And, I'm not the only one that's like that in the world. And people move to new areas based on the quality of the school and trying to do what's best for their kid. And so I don't know, like as a teacher, I'll tell you right now, I would never put a chatbot in front of my student because I know it's a probabilistic model, and that if it makes a mistake, which it will because of probability, that I would be on the hook for that. But as a parent, Fonz, if I have an opportunity to send my kids to a school where everybody's scoring in the top 2% and it doesn't cost me anything extra for X, Y, and Z reasons, what are you going to do? And of course, you're going to choose what you think is going to give your kid the best results. And so I get really worried that we've pushed some subpar tools into public education, and here we are with some private schools that are doing a great job at getting their students to perform. I'm not sure that the conversation doesn't skew in that direction here in the next few years. I'm not, what I mean? I believe in teachers. I think teachers are the best people on earth. I think they make the biggest impact. Mm-hmm. You could go down the list, but that's not how our society feels about teachers. And that's certainly not how our society feels about education. And I get worried whenever chatbot-based schools are having super great results. And what that means for education as a whole, what that means for public schools, what that means for people in low-income areas, everything that I've been working towards. And I think last time I had a really cynical view on this perspective, chatbot's not good. Putting Abraham Lincoln in front of students is a lie if it's a chatbot, and all these things, which I still believe in. But some of the results that are coming out from people are insane, and it makes you think. It certainly makes you stand back and think about what this means for education.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I know when I was researching Alpha School, because there's one here locally in my area that's about an hour and a half away, which is in the same city now that the Starbase is for, the rocket launches and everything. So I'm pretty sure that that'll be a school that'll continue to grow, especially with what they charge with tuition. But before, and this was before they got all the hype, I know that they had their curriculum up on the website, and then all of a sudden it came down. But the last time I checked, I know that they were using IXL for math, which is really just, you go in there, students can go select a specific skill, and they just kind of sit there and practice the skill. I don't know what else they added. I know for the high school, they used to use some of the Plato software, which is really like credit recovery software that they would use. But now, it's very interesting to see what it is that they would use. And I may have to take them up on an offer on a tour that they offered me. So just to kind of see what it's all about, and especially the local one here, and see, like, as you said, there are some, it's coming out. There's data that's coming out as far as that is concerned. My thing is always just, even within a school district where I work at, it's always the South Side kids have more access to things outside of school. So, the outside tutors and things of that sort. And it always was that they would do better because they would have that access, or, parent at home, where the North Side kids, they didn't have that support at home. And so I know that plays into a role of those things. But
Absolutely.
one of the things too, though, is that I feel like every student can learn. It's not, I just don't like the fact that they say, well, it's the North Side kids, it's expected. No, we got to raise those standards too. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But kind of talking back and talking about, chatbots, and talking about LLMs. I know, Thomas T, you posted something on LinkedIn. I think it was actually today. You were revisiting, taxonomy here. Let me get the actual title of that. It says Revisiting a Taxonomy of LLMs for Education Application. So, and I know you wrote a really nice post there, very descriptive. You've got, talking about domains and subdomains and things of that sort. So I want to ask you, in writing this and revisiting this, like, and I love the subtitle. It says a taxonomy is a picture of the thing, a particular form. Tell me a little bit about your thought process as far as writing this Substack and the information that you shared here, because I thought that was pretty insightful.
Yeah, so it's essentially just taking a look at the it's like 20 authors on this paper. Wong is the head author. 2024, the paper is called Large Language Models for Education, a Survey and Outlook, and they proposed essentially a taxonomy of different instructional implications of LLMs. You've probably seen it circulated all over the place. Even if you don't know, listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've probably seen the chart. It's like academic research, study assisting, teach assisting, adaptive learning, tries to like essentially catalog all the different domains of large language models. And I think the reason why the title is what it is that, I mean, like all taxonomies, it's a very particular picture of education. It's a way of looking at teaching and learning that centers on, in this case, performance as the sole benchmark of quality. So like teaching and learning in this taxonomy, it consists of like discrete automatable units, like question solving, error correction, material creation. I don't think any teacher would describe their job as just question solving, error correction, and materials creation. There's much more to it, right? It doesn't capture the full grammar of educational activities, doesn't capture the lived context in which those activities gain meaning, which I think is a particularly unique boundary for large language models, in that while they're doing this kind of broad statistical modeling of language, they don't have kind of the context in which parts of language gain meaning in context, right? So some certain words and phrases might mean different things to teachers than it would to, say, like someone who's not in the field. For example, the word taxonomy itself, right? For a teacher, it evokes ideas of like Bloom's taxonomy or Marzona's taxonomy. But if you say taxonomy to a biologist, right, they might think of like the taxonomy of different animals, right? Or Homo sapiens, for example, that's the taxonomy of creatures, biological things. Hummel, was that, I muddled through that okay?
That was good.
I had a science reference, and I want to make sure I just didn't sound like a bonehead. So, like in general, I think it's not a critique of the paper. I think they did an admirable job with what they did. But I think it shows something that the field itself views education. When I say the field itself, right, the broad swath of AI research, AI tooling provided to teachers very much treats teaching as this kind of set of tasks that can be almost automated away. So tools for solving problems, generating questions, creating materials. But those actions themselves, they don't carry meaning just because you did them, right? They carry meaning in how you deploy them. A good question is only really a good question when it engages that student in meaning making in the classroom.
At the
A follow-up question at the proper time. A follow-up question only gains meaning when you ask that follow-up question again at the proper time, at the proper place, to the right student. That's when that question gains meaning, because otherwise it's just sitting around and not really doing anything. And I worry about the general... The taxonomy is technically accurate. I think these tools are out there. There are tools for question solving and question creation, but that's not what's important necessarily. The drafting of the materials are, but it's why you ask the questions, how we correct students, when we guide students, what it means for something to be understood. Large language model has no conception of any of these things because it has no conception of anything. So like when you're working with an AI, you shouldn't think of it as like a thought partner. It's not really that. What you're doing is you're playing a language game with a computer, and you're trying to, I'd say trick, but you're not really tricking it because it doesn't have intentionality either. What you're trying to do is just select your words carefully, so you put it in this language game so it repeats back language that looks like high quality instruction. It doesn't understand high quality instruction, but we can trick it with language such that what it returns appears to be that. Now that can be hollow, that can be thin, that can be factually inaccurate if you're not taking proper precautions. But even if you take quote unquote proper precautions, and I can dive into what those are, you're still not going to completely eliminate hallucinations from AI responses. You can't. They're an affordance of the system. They're a unique emergent property of the probabilistic mapping of language in response to inputs. You will always have some level of hallucination.
There's no, right, the teacher's expertise, there's no other thing that can replace that, and that's what we build our system on.
Yeah. No, and that's something Oh, and I kind of wanted to add a little bit to what you were saying. I know it came up a little bit in the chat a while back that you were talking about, like, chatbots, and if you put IDK, 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 of course, are we talking about just that exposure to the right answers and just correcting? Are we missing out on so many more things? And obviously, you've mentioned a lot of things, and like Thomas H, you just said right now that there are some things that the AI cannot replace that teachers can do, as opposed to, like you mentioned, very probabilistic answers. And I know back in episode 324, I believe I had Charlie Myers, who was on here, and said, it's pretty much just a data set, like in a matrix, that you're putting in an answer, and then it's just going to give you something back. It's a mathematical equation. But the way that he said it, and I don't know how you think about this too, but he said, if we were being completely honest, that when we are putting a chatbot in front of a student and it said, hey, I'm just a chatbot, I have no context about you, I don't know anything about you, but you're giving me this question, and I'm going to give you a question without, whatever it is that I know and I can crank out, is this really what you're putting in front of your students, and what is your thought process in doing that? So I think that that's something that we need to think about. I know Thomas H, you mentioned it with a couple of platforms that may say, hey, go ahead and talk to Abraham Lincoln, but how well is that information going to come in? How accurate is it going to be? And is there still room for the teacher to be able to go ahead and make any corrections and make sure that they vet the information properly? And so those are just kind of the things that I think about too when students have access to an LLM, whether it's a persona that they're talking to, historical figure, or if it's just the LLM itself. So I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges? Thomas H, I'll go with you. Like this past year, and just this past year, we'll focus on this because I know it's been a long road. But in this past year, what have been some of the major challenges that you've seen within your school, as far as teachers using AI within their classrooms?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is that we don't have time to even learn AI. I went this whole year. I planned for an 8th grade class that never even hired an 8th grade teacher. So we just had rotating subs the entire year. And that's just the reality of most schools. I think like 70% of schools have a vacancy that's available. And it's hard to get to a spot where you're thriving if you're worried about surviving. And that's where most schools are at. Most public schools are at right now. So my school has done zero AI policy. CBS tried to come in and film us and film me and Thomas whenever we were first started with EduAid, and they denied CBS from coming in and doing an interview because they were so scared about the reputation of AI and what that means for our local community and things. And so I'm on our AI committee. We've issued some guidance where now every single assignment, a teacher has to dictate the amount of AI that the student is allowed to use on it. I'm not sure that necessarily covers everything, but it does start to frame the world. It doesn't allow us to hide from the fact that this technology is here. So maybe if it's an essay, I'll tell my students this is a 5. You cannot use any AI on it at all. If you do, that would be considered cheating or something like that. That's the idea with the guidelines of the AI. But my school is so far behind. And Fonz, I'll even tell you this. We just did a Maryland summit over outside of DC and Baltimore. And I was the only person from my school district to attend the summit. And not only that, I was one of 3 people from the entire general area in which we live that attended the summit. And so to me, I'm a big believer that this is going to continue to create this digital divide, and it's only going to amplify it because like people aren't even like, and I'm not trying to be a hater here, but like the school districts where I live don't even care. They don't even care to do what's best for the students. They don't even care about this information. They're just trying to hire enough teachers to staff their building. And that's their number one priority. So, where I'm from and where I'm dealing with it, like on a personal level, who knows? I mean, it's the Wild West still of AI, and it's year 3. So there's no plans in my school district at all to guide or to do anything. In fact, they actually bought Turnitin, and I had to throw a huge fit because of nobody even read any of the data about how those things work, whether they can actually identify AI or anything like that. And so, I live in that kind of system, and there's many like that out there.
Yeah. And it's very interesting just to kind of go back to that you mentioned that there are many schools that really at this point, yes, the conversations are kind of being had. There's that summer slide, but you know what? Now that I'm coming back, it's like I got to worry to make sure that I do have a teacher in a classroom and so on. And so that's where those priorities are. Now, my thing is, and I'm going to ask you this, and then I kind of want to go back. We'll go back into some of the great updates and new things that you're bringing out to EduAid. But now that I have you here as founders, and getting just an honest answer from you, being at ISTE and seeing, kind of like the big 5 companies that are out there slowly that were at ISTE that are kind of slowly just being a predominant name or very well-known name. As a founder, and as much effort as they put into this, sometimes I feel like, are they a little bit out of touch and think that this is a perfect utopia, that everybody should have access to AI, and they really don't consider, what is happening here, like you described, Thomas H. And so I kind of want to know from you, as EduAid founders, what are your thoughts here? Because again, I see that people are all in, and in our bubble and the bubble that I was in this last weekend, I feel like everybody's like, no, we all have it. We all have it. And everybody should have it. Everybody should be using it. Everybody should have access. And I'm like, do you not know that other school districts have other issues and bigger problems and, teacher shortages and all of that? But the push is go, 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 AI, AI. So I want to ask you, how do you guys keep your feet grounded? Because I feel like you guys are very well grounded, and kind of because of Thomas H, you're still in the classroom. So Thomas T, I'll go with you. How does that work for you both? What do you see, and how do you guys just kind of, understand that, man, we ourselves as founders have some barriers to overcome to make sure that we can help teachers?
Yeah, I mean, one area where we're particularly lucky is that Thomas Hummel is obstinate in his desire to stay in the classroom, like will not come on the EduAid full time, despite the pleas for more assistance but I'm kidding. He likes to stay in the classroom, and we respect this decision precisely because, one, he sees the application in action. It's one thing to gather feedback. It's one thing to have users send videos of their usage of the tool to you. It's one thing to do studies, but it's something that I even find myself missing now that I'm no longer in the classroom, was like stepping into that building in the morning and working with students, and like maybe I'm getting too far away into thinking about like philosophy of education and the science of learning and things like this, because on day to day, it's like, how much was that crossing my mind while I was in the classroom? How much was I don't know, just to pick out some random like AI, tech tool platforms that were around, like how much was Kialo or Nuzella or Canva at the top of my mind on. The tool was a means to an end, right? I'm concerned about my student behaviors. I'm concerned about my classroom management. I'm concerned about reaching the 25 students in front of me. I'm concerned that when I say something, I take an action as a teacher that's going to set off 25 minds in different reactions, which will then bounce off of each other and cause even more reactions. Like, teaching is a very messy and chaotic thing. I mean, my classroom is really well run. I don't want to sound like I was struggling to manage my classroom. Like, I had routines and structures from day one and like had that down. But what I'm saying is, it's very easy if you are not in the classroom to be removed from the day-to-day struggle and context of the teacher. And if you are removed from the day-to-day context, the means of life as a teacher, you don't have that same grammar. You're not speaking the same language, so to speak. You're kind of talking past each other, which is very common, I think, in the world today. So it's like technologists, even most well-intentioned individuals, have this kind of just grammatical gap from the daily experience of the educator. And that's very tough. I mean, that's something that you're going to see reflected in AI outputs as well. I mean, the day-to-day interactions between a teacher and student, they're not documented. And I mean, there are plenty of blogs out there that maybe talk about this, and that might be in the training data, but it's not a thing that is so prominent and so discernible. Also, learning is, for all intents and purposes, invisible. It's not something that we can see. It's not something that you can point to. And like, it happens internally in the student's mind. So we have all these proxies that take place for it, right? Some good, some not so good. Like when I first started teaching, the school I was teaching at with Hummel, admittedly had terrible proxies. It's like, did you have your learning objective and success criteria on the board, and did you refer to them? I'm like, well, this is a proxy for quality, but how does this in any way relate to real and meaningful learning on the part of the student? It doesn't. So it's like I worry about the proxies taken by those who are not in the classroom. I worry about kind of having that contextual barrier where you're not really speaking the same language. I also worry that education is incredibly faddish, right? We like to repackage things and say it's something brand new. It's like, okay, discovery learning, inquiry-based learning, self-guided learning, like all of these things are essentially the same thing, just like some slight PR changes. It's like, so even at that level, like we can't even get on the same page of what we're talking about from one school to the next or one classroom to the next. What one teacher might call a specific method, another teacher will call another. Sorry, there's a terrible storm outside. I'm getting a lot of background noise. So, I mean, I said a lot there. If I had to like summarize this down to like the prime concerns, it's like very easy to find yourself in your own kind of language game, your own bubble, so to speak, and very easy to then like assume you're talking about the same thing as other folks, just to realize that you're not, right? That's a great tip about marriage as well. It's not the fights that you have, it's when you think you're in agreement without actually ever having the conversation to make sure that you are. You're just assuming the other person has the same expectations, needs, wants, and desires. And it's like the needs and wants and desires and theory of mind of a technologist will not be the same as a teacher. So it also helps that we don't live in a tech hub either. Like I live in Annapolis, Maryland. I go to the coffee shop by St. John College. I talk to teachers. Like I'm very much my feet are on the ground and kind of removed from the conference scene. So like when I go to something like NIST or ASU GSB, it's like, whoa, this is a whole new world from what I'm accustomed to in Maryland.
Yeah. And Thomas H., I'll go with you too, because I want to get your feedback. I know being said that you were the only one in your school. I mean, and I went to ISTE this year and it was my second ISTE. But this year I got to participate a little bit more. But it just seems like sometimes I think like, man, like this is just a bubble that's here, and we kind of lose all sense and notion of reality of how things can really be at other school districts. So I want to ask you that, how do you keep your feet ground? Obviously, I think it's just because of the experience that you're still there in the classroom, but tell me your thoughts. And,
It's super weird because tech is an abundance industry where they just make tons of money, have tons of money, have all kinds of funding, and money is never an issue with tech. But then education, money is always an issue, and it's a scarcity industry. And so it's funny how we see the difference between these two things, and the bridge between those two could not be any further. I think if anybody who creates a product in education, if they just substituted for 5 days, their product would be totally different than what it actually is, because you would have a better understanding of what it actually means to be grounded in the classroom and providing instruction, being forward thinking about it, right? Like I can't just teach a class on Wednesday and not know where that's going on Thursday or Friday, and those kind of things. Like just that whole mindset is totally missed in education, or is missed in the ed tech department of education. And there's just, if you think about where we've been for the last 15 years, we've only seen a decrease in the quality of our education and the outcomes of our students. And yet everybody who has a tech product tells you that it's the best thing that's ever come to be and it's going to save all the problems. But the general trend of education is heading in the complete opposite direction. And so that goes to tell me that either people are they believe their products and they believe that they can solve the world's problems, or B, that they're lying and it's just disingenuous and that they're trying to make money off the backs of teachers and students. And, I don't want to put that on anybody, but that's the reality of it, is that if you're going to make these promises and you don't keep them, there are consequences to it. And I'll give you one here, is that the Gallup poll that just came out said that teachers are saving 6 hours a week with AI. But when all these products came out, it was 10 plus hours a week. And so my challenge to these people and to anybody thinking about this serious, if they come up 40% short on the student department, 40%, if they come up 40% on their expectations or their guarantees or their promises short, are you okay with that? With that happening to a student? I don't know why we're okay with that happening to teachers. and it just doesn't make sense. And if we're not going to do what's best for teachers with tech, then you truly don't care about the students either, and that's really concerning. And I think that's how we stay grounded, honestly. It's like we never
It's the framing and intentionality.
We've never said that. We never said this is going to save you X, Y, Z. We just said it's going to save you time and create higher quality lessons, and that's what all of our users always say. And so it's really interesting, but there's no repercussions for it, Fawn. So, you could go out there with your own ed tech company, say you're going to make every student get 100%, everybody buys it, and that doesn't come true. There's no repercussions to it at all, because the thing that's happened with the tech department of educational technology is that there's so much money poured into the growth of these companies, where growth is the only thing that matters, but the quality does not seem to follow that growth. And if anything, that's just going to continue us on the trend of the last 15 years. And I think that's a shame for AI, because this is the most revolutionary technology that's ever come about in my lifetime. And for us to just, continue with false claims or marketing schemes, it's really upsetting sometimes.
I mean, it doesn't help that the whole enterprise of teaching and learning is incredibly complex and messy, and how that process works doesn't map on neatly to any one tool or application. So when you frame an application or tool as a general solution to a lot of problems, it becomes disingenuous in that there are no general solutions to all of the problems in teaching. There are particular contextual solutions based on the particular group of students in front of you, or the particular kind of context of the school that you're working in. And it's hard to generalize that. We love to systematize and generalize and kind of have these broad taxonomies or frameworks for kind of viewing everything through that lens. And those lenses run into more trouble than they're worth, honestly. Every tool should be like, it's useful in these particular contexts. And that should be a fine claim to make, but it seems it's not the claim that leads to height and growth. So it's not the claim at all.
It's hard, though, because the whole ecosystem of ed tech, right? Where's the governing body that is checking the quality of Magic School's tools, EduAid's, Brisk, Diffit? There is none. And the only ones that you do, you have to pay to have them do that. And so, right, it's like there isn't an honest perspective on ed tech that puts it in front of the educators. And I think that that's wrong. So,
I mean, the question also comes around, what are the measurement criteria themselves? Like, it's, okay, so you record time saving, but it was like time saving to what end? Is it time saving in that a novice teacher is bypassing the hard cognitive work of doing and planning instruction, or like, are they losing intentionality? I mean, this is something that we also need to consider. If we're worried about skills loss from over-reliance on AI at the student level, we need to stop pretending that adults also don't have brains that react to stimuli, and not the same way as students, obviously, but in dynamic and interesting ways that it's not immediately apparent. It's like, okay, so if you kind of outsource your upper cognitive functioning in terms of lesson planning and instructional design, maybe your product, you have the product, the end state, like you have the lesson, you have the materials. But you can envision a study where you have, let's take 100 teachers, right? You put 50 of them in the control group. They're just doing straight lesson planning, human to human, maybe collaborative planning, or they're just planning in a vacuum with traditional materials. Maybe you give another teacher just access to basic search functionality, another group, and then your other group would be teachers using generative AI tools. If you were to say you need to return X, Y, and Z materials, so you specify it, I want a lesson plan, I want the materials for instruction to go with it. Once you have all of those materials, if you were to ask each one of those teachers in those groups to explain their lesson to you, which group do you think would be able to do that best? And is it more important then that we create materials of instruction, or that teachers still have that level of explainability where they understand at the content level, at the pedagogical level, what it is that they're doing, why they're doing it, and when it's appropriate to augment it and to change it? Over-reliance, I think, will always be an issue. Verification and prompting. I mean, all of these kind of converge. Maybe at the worst time, too, with educational outcomes being at kind of historical lows. Maybe they're bouncing back from the worst parts of COVID, but still a lot of concerns out in the open there.
Yeah. No, most definitely. I think you guys hit on a lot of great things. And one thing that I will say, and just the fact that you guys are just so well grounded, really, it kind of, we don't see you at the ISTEs, we don't see you at TCEAs, and we don't see you in all that, but just the fact that you're still very well known and being very well recognized for the work that you're doing, and because of the help that you bring to others, and just the pedagogy behind this. It's not just tech first, and that's one thing that I really enjoy. And speaking with you all, that it's not about the tech first. It's what can I do for the teacher first, help them, like you said, having those levels of explainability, not being too over reliant, but just reliant enough to where they can enhance what they are already doing, still be able to work with the students, and still be able to share all those great things with them. So that's something that's huge there. So as we kind of start wrapping up, though, and before, I want to talk about some of the newer updates, and I know that I've been seeing a lot of that on social media as well. So we'll go ahead and start with Thomas H. Tell me a little bit about on through that teacher lens and mindset. What are some of the updates there that the educators should be thrilled about that have come out through on your platform?
Yeah, so I don't know if Thomas Thompson would frame it this way, but I'm going to frame it this way: is that we've done a good job at enhancing our graphic organizers and our games. And these are things that teachers typically would go to Teachers Pay Teachers for because somebody else has done it at a certain quality, or it's going to save you time, or XYZ. But we believe that our prompting and the quality in which we're putting out for those things is better than, if not comparable to, the best Teacher Pay Teacher stuff. And we're doing it obviously at a fraction or no cost. And I'm really, really excited about that. It's like, how can we allow teachers to create content that is specific for those students, specific for lessons, and that is reaching those deeper goals, or just reaching the goals of the lesson or the standard? So super stoked about those two things, the graphic organizers and the games. There's this game we have. It's tic-tac-toe. Obviously, everybody knows how to play it. But I'm so excited to get my students doing it as a review. Whereas I'm going to give them questions. I've already started making stuff for the next year, like on cells and so, like that's how I started the year. But like, instead of me doing like a 5-question review, I'm going to give them their own, like them and a partner, their own separate tic-tac-toe game with like all the 9 spaces with review questions and stuff. Like, I cannot wait to see how I can start to gamify my lessons and just make them that much more engaging, rather than, I want to take out all of the me in the front of the classroom and put it on the students and the partners, and that's where I'm going with it this year. And I think that EduAid is going to allow me to do that.
Excellent. Thomas T, how about yourself? Tell me about all that excitement.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I've been sitting on this binder. This is Mr. Claire's graphic organizers I picked up my senior year of high school when I first started thinking about teaching. And it's like, when I first launched EduAid, I'm like, these graphic organizers, I use them almost every day in the classroom, some form of them, right? Being able to lay out materials in a very visual, structured way. When generative AI first came out, it was the streaming walls of text, but that got old pretty quick. So we moved into the structured outputs. Graphic organizers particularly, they were echoing each other just because we're excited about it. We just put it out. But like, one thing to note on those, it's like, here's one version of Mr. Claire's change analysis worksheet, but then like, here's another version of it, which is the few slight alterations and tweaks. Here's another version of it, right? There were always different versions of those same graphic organizers floating around his class, depending on the group, depending on the particulars of the context of the students. So we built these such that there's a bunch of these like one-click toggles where you can add a collaboration activity to the beginning of the Venn diagram, or maybe you have a Venn diagram, you add a third circle. It will just kind of automatically refactor itself based on your content that you've input, but like, it'll do it dynamically. So it's all one-click differentiation, all simple toggles. You can add, a retrieval question set to your marking the text exercise, or you can change it to a 3-2-1 for writing prep, where you're putting out 3 vocabulary words that you didn't understand, 2 sentences you would rewrite what the central claim was. That's really cool. To me, anyway, like being able to do very fast differentiation of multiple copies of materials in like a fraction of the time it would have taken me to create one beforehand would have been very powerful when I was in the co-taught classroom working with 15 students with IEPs, and I needed to do a lot of that differentiation work. I mean, it's no wonder that EduAid started that year when I was doing all of that work, right? Trying to do the differentiation piece. So that's what got me really excited about organizers. The community response, we couldn't be happier with it. A lot of excitement and interest. And then, I mean, our roadmap for the next few months has been totally dictated by the community, right? Folks coming online saying, I love the organizers, but let's see some argument maps. Let's see flow charts. Let's see storyboards, analogy diagrams, the Cornell note-taking formats, concept maps, and so on. So it's like, now we have our plate full. Like, we tested the general idea, and yes, teachers like the graphic organizers want to interact with them, so we'll continue to build it out. And then, I mean, back-end stuff that teachers can't see, right? These new evaluator tools that we have our hands on, being able to really, like, on a very fine-tuned level, get a look at what our outputs are and how we can tweak them and how we can continue to improve the end output on Eduaid is also very exciting. It's fun. Like, what else? I get to wake up in the morning, I get to talk to other educators, folks working in education. I get to do research. I get to do experiments. Like, it's truly a blessing.
That is fantastic.
It's just stressful sometimes.
Yeah. No, but it's fantastic, the work that you're doing, and just to continue to do that. And again, the way that you put community first, too. I mean, I know that there are many other platforms out there that always say, yeah, community first. And I know to some extent, but just the fact that you guys really do this and it's community first, and you really take that into account. And I know Thomas H. being at the school too, I'm sure he hears it from his teachers like, hey, how about trying to add a little bit of this or a little bit of that or something. I mean, it's not always that you get to work with a co-founder of an AI platform and then you can give a suggestion right then and there, and that's something that's fantastic. So that's huge. But gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much. Also, from the bottom of my heart, my sincerest thanks for being just an amazing supporter of my EdTech life and the work that we're doing here. Because again, if it wasn't for platforms like yourself, and just not just platforms, but just humans like yourself, human beings that I consider friends like yourself, Thomas Hummel, Thomas Thompson, thank you so much for everything that you've done for this show, and just that we continue to bring these great conversations. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And for all our listeners, please make sure that you follow these fine gentlemen on LinkedIn. I promise you, they always do some great posts, but please make sure that you check out EduAid also as well. And of course, those links will be there in the show notes. But before we wrap up, I know we always end the show with these last couple of questions. And it's interesting to hear now from our 4-time guest. I know every appearance, he's had a different answer. Thomas H2, I don't know. I'm always anxious to hear your answers to these questions. So we'll go ahead and start with Thomas H first. This first one, as we know, every superhero has a weakness. So kryptonite was Superman's weakness. So I want to ask you right now, in the current state of AI, or it could be in education in general, it could be either one or both. What would you say is your current kryptonite?
Yeah, I would say just the fact that I'm still a teacher, I just think that this one hits home a little bit. But just trusting in the teachers as professionals, I think that that's something that's been taken away from us for a trend for a while. And I think I see that in the tech as well coming through, is we just need to trust teachers in being the professionals. And if you take the judgment of teachers away from them, that is only going to hurt education. And if you take the decision making away from the people that know the students the best, I think that that's bad for education. So I would say that that's my kryptonite, is just keep teachers with their power. And I think that's a good thing.
Excellent. Good answer. Thomas T., what would your kryptonite be currently?
You're muted.
Trying to block out the storm. Maybe kryptonite might be the wrong word, but it's the thing that's definitely a gap, and I'm working really hard to get a sense of how we fill it, which is we have all these general heuristics for how to do teaching well, space your practice, mix up your problems, these kinds of things. How do you translate that into precise kind of adaptive systems that you can put out in front of teachers? So it's like, I'm going to sound like a broken record here: retrieval practice, interleaving, spacing. How do you get those to interact dynamically and not just independently? I'm also just mimicking Carl Hendrick. You should go subscribe to his Substack, The Learning Dispatch. Him exploring the science of learning is a constant source of inspiration on our side. But yeah, how do you translate that? It's the problem that we started off trying to solve. It's the problem that we're still wrestling with.
Excellent. All right. Great answer. Now I'm going to start with you, Thomas T. What if you could have a billboard with anything on it? What would it be and why?
I I've had other answers that were a little pedantic, so let's go with something a little more fun. Maybe I'll just go with the quote I pulled for that Substack I put out, which is a picture held us captive, and we could not get outside of it. For it lay in language, and language seemed to repeat it to us inexorably. I think that's a powerful reminder.
All right. Excellent. Good quote. I love it. All right, Thomas H.
Still pedantic, less fun. Sorry, couldn't think of a fun thing on the top of my head.
Hey, it works, though. It works. Thomas H., what would your billboard say?
Join EduAid educators on Facebook. We're giving away $100 every Friday for the summer. That's what it is.
There you go. Hey, that's a great billboard too. Sign me up for that too as well.
Every Friday.
All right.
No, go ahead for real though. Join. We're giving away $100 to a teacher every Friday for all summer. So that's kind of how we like to give back. Is just literally just give back to teachers.
Excellent. No, and it has been a thriving community there on Facebook. So please make sure that you join that Facebook group, and I will make sure and give you all the links. All right, listeners, so you can make sure that you connect, join the Facebook group, and all that great stuff. All right, last question. All right, so we'll start with Thomas H. Thomas H., if you could trade places with a single person for a day, who would that be and why?
Wow. If I could trade places with a single person for a day, I probably would trade places with Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe, and just so I would know what it would be like to be great at soccer. I think I spent like the first half of my life trying to be great at soccer. So, there's a lot of time invested in that. I think I'd be Cristiano Ronaldo for a day.
Excellent. All right, and Thomas T., who would you trade places with for a day?
Really, like any kid. I think it'd be fun to be a kid again, just to experience wonder and curiosity when the world's new. I mean, that's why, like, remember when, like, you were a kid in the summer, days used to feel so long? Yes. Like, days don't feel long anymore because we're not building any new experiences. Like, we were always learning, and everything was new and exciting, so, like, days seem to drag on because they're full of new experiences. Lost that. I mean, I'm still curious, and I still have wonder about the world, but I think that was even more so as a kid. So I'd be any kid for a day, just recapture that perspective.
There you go. I love that. And you're right. I think like routine has definitely made the days a lot shorter.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much, as always, for your support. Thank you so much for being great guests. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And just continue doing what you're doing, guys, because sincerely, you guys are definitely making a change. Well, actually making a difference in a lot of educators' lives and in their practice too as well. And again, also just really, I love the fact that you stay true to your pedagogy first, tech second approach, and not the other way around, as that can definitely make a big difference. So thank you.
Can I say the same thing about you? I mean, we really appreciate you being the objective voice in the space. I don't see anybody else doing the work that you're doing, and bringing it to teachers directly from founders' mouths or from anybody else. I think that anytime that you can get out the cut through the BS of the EdTech marketing scheme, I think that you do a great job of this, and we just really appreciate knowing you and being affiliated with you in any way.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate that feedback. That goes a long way. It definitely fills my bucket as a podcaster. I really appreciate that, and also just as an educator too. So I really appreciate those words, guys, and thank you so much for the encouragement. And again, my hat's off to you for all the work that you guys are doing. And for all our listeners, please make sure that you connect with Thomas Thompson, Thomas Hummel. All those links will be in the show notes, the Facebook group links also too as well. That way you can join that wonderful community and just to continue to learn from Thomas Thompson and Thomas Hummel, because they will reply to your messages. I mean, talk about a place where you have founders that will listen and go ahead and share and do great things. This is a great community, so I definitely encourage you to join them. And again, please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 328 episodes that I promise you will gain a lot of knowledge nuggets from, that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. And please make sure that you look for all the EduAid episodes too, because you will find Thomas Thompson and Thomas H there also, as well as, like I mentioned to you, Thomas T, fourth-time guest, first ever. So congrats on that. And of course, Thomas H has joined this very special group too of a 3-time guest. So thank you all for that. And
we
as
got to get a
always,
solo episode on so I can catch up.
there you go. Well, hey, we'll throw that in too. That way we can catch you up. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So thank you all, as always, for all your support. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we do what we do for you to continue to bring you some amazing conversations. And thank you again to our show sponsors. Thank you so much to Book Creator, EduAid, and Yellow Dig. We really appreciate it. And of course, my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.